Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House, alongside, as always, Mr. Martin Popoff on this rainy
Yes.
day in the Hudson Valley here in New York.
Oh, we've just got nice and cool sunny day, so pretty cool. So,
Okay.
so
You
yeah,
didn't get any rain in the
the heat
overnight,
wave is
like the day
growing.
before, maybe?
No, it's been fine. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it was, weather was kind of nice yesterday. I think we had two warmish days the last 2 days, but I think today starts to cool down for a bit anyway, but it was almost 90 here the other day, which was weird because we had cooler days before, cooler days after. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weather's Mother Nature's doing whatever the hell she wants here. I saw something, I don't know if you saw this, but here in New York, they're predicting that it's going to be a pretty warm fall, and we're not really going to get the actual fall type weather till maybe November.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here's a funny thing. I like watching these a lot of these different geography videos, and there's this one guy, I think it's Geography by Jeff, where he does these "why does no one live here" thing, right? And northwestern the states and parts of Canada and blah blah blah. And there was one on why does no one live in upstate New York, and there was an interesting answer to that. Like one of the reasons was the Erie Canal, and that made it easier than using the St. Lawrence. And then also, what was funny is that what also dampened the use of the St. Lawrence was that Canada and the U.S. were kind of at war still when all that was developing. And the final thing is apparently the Iroquois tribe nation had such a good basically nation going and an organized war force and stuff that it actually stopped settlers from the States and the UK or whatnot, white people moving in as well. So there were all these different reasons why. And I think it said something like, oh boy, what was the number? Over 75% of New York's population is in the New York City area, right?
Yeah, I mean,
75.
that's true. I
So
mean, I've obviously been further up north than where I live, and
yeah,
sometimes you go to some of these towns and you don't see houses for miles, or you see a house here, then a half a mile later you see another one, and the towns are like, what you consider like a neighborhood, right?
yeah.
So I
And
just
it's not the most arable land, and it gets a lot of snow, right?
yeah, the weather is bad up there. I think that has a lot to do with it. The winters are pretty harsh. And I just think some people like more kind of civilization, right?
Yeah,
Because there are a lot of people like who live like in my area. This is not the city, but it's not that what we were just talking about. It's like
yeah.
somewhere in between. I think people don't like this whole sense of isolation, where it's like, well, where's the nearest store? I got to travel 10 miles to it. My nearest neighbor is 3 miles away,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So not everybody likes that. So I can see why the further up north you go here in New York, closer to Canada, it's pretty sparsely, there's not a lot of
But,
people there.
but I thought it was funny that it does have to do with not getting along with the Iroquois and not getting along with Canada, basically,
Yeah,
too.
and that could be, yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Right.
So thanks for joining us today, everybody. We're going to kind of deviate a little bit. So we did these guitar riff episodes, which most of you seem to like. Today we're going to kind of comment on some things that are going on in the world of hard rock and metal, newsworthy items that people have asked us to talk about and kind of we want to talk about. So we've got a handful of things to discuss here today. First of all, we're going to talk Aerosmith's been in the news a bit of late. First of all, they announced recently that they were going to have to retire from touring, right, because of Steven Tyler's vocal issues. And then we've got a interesting Rolling Stone article that came out yesterday talking about the top 50 Aerosmith songs of all time, which is kind of a puzzling list, as we've come to expect from Rolling Stone. So let's kind of talk a little bit about the fact that Aerosmith no more as a touring entity. And honestly, Martin, I don't think I was overly surprised at this. Like, you had to figure this was coming at some point, but it seemed just kind of like abrupt, right? I mean, Steven, the doctors are basically like, you can't do this anymore. That's that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And it we've had a few months of this go on, and it was kind of there was a lot of silence. So obviously they were trying to figure out
Yeah.
whether it was going to happen or not. And you can tell there's infighting and aging and, a lot of abuse on these bodies over the years, right?
Yeah.
They're not looking the greatest either. But, they've had the drummer problems and stuff. So it's kind of cool that it's good when once in a while these bands just kind of close the door, and hopefully they don't open the door again, but just to say, okay, we're retiring, right? No one wants to use that term, right? But I thought this was funny. There was Tom Hamilton got interviewed by AARP, right?
Of all play
And
people, right?
yeah, and they asked how much hope does Aerosmith have on a scale of 1 to 10, being doubtful we'll do anything, and 10 being yes, we'll be doing something. And Tom Hamilton says, on the hope scale, I'm somewhere between 7 and 9. We won't be doing any tours from now on, but I'll always have hope that other types of opportunities will come along. So he's being totally vague, right?
Yeah.
And as we've debated in our email group, right, it's like it's pretty unrealistic to think all of a sudden Aerosmith's going to be a band that makes lots of records and great records, right? Because they haven't made great
memory
records.
hasn't showed that at all.
They haven't made great records, and they haven't made lots of records, over the last 30 years, kind of thing, right? So that, I don't know what he's talking about there, but this isn't the first time black clouds have been on our horizon, and somehow the sun managed to come out. Time and hope are all we have at the moment. So I don't know about you, but I mean, I just think it would be cool if maybe these guys low key showed up in sort of supergroup configurations of some sort or whatever.
Well, I mean, that seems to make sense, right? Because now that they don't have any touring commitments with the band, and as we just stated, it's not like they have been a prolific band in the studio over the last 20 plus years, right? So it's not like all of a sudden like, well, since we can't play live, we're going to make lots of records now. I mean, history shows that has not been the case. So you have to, like, I was thinking when I first heard this, I was thinking, all right, so Joe's got this Hollywood Vampires thing going on, right? Which basically is a super group, right? They did that big tour not all that long ago. They've recorded some stuff. Do you think it's possible that maybe they want to make this a more regular thing now that Joe doesn't have to worry about Aerosmith anymore? And would that be successful? I mean, you got Alice Cooper, you got Johnny Depp, various other people. They can bring in anybody they want into that. For Joe Perry, would that make sense? I would say yes. Does he bring the Joe Perry project to be a more regular thing? To me, I'm almost more intrigued, what's Brad Whitford going to do now? What's Tom going to do now? Those are the lower profile guys in the band. And more importantly, what's Steven Tyler going to do? Because, I don't think we can expect another Steven Tyler country record, right? I think that was kind of like a one and done disaster, but I don't know. They're free to do whatever the hell they want now. It'll be
a good point. Maybe Steven could sing a whole record, right? Maybe he can still do that, right? With all the studio tricks that you can do. But again, it's like this band. Well, as we're going to talk about with this list, I mean, this band is just one of those frustrating bands that everybody's basically of a consensus that post pump, at least, if you even give them that far, post pump, everybody just does not like those records. They're just so corporately overworked and thought out and long and full of the ballads, and we need one of these and one of these and one of these. Joe's got to sing a song and blah blah blah, right? Yeah. Different producers and the collaborators and all that stuff, right? Song doctors. So it's just too bad. And any time I've interviewed those guys, they've kind of let that frustration come through, where they've said, we always go in with the greatest intentions,
and they come out
a good rockin' record, and then all of a sudden everybody gets involved, and Steven wants this and the label wants that, blah blah blah, and all of a sudden it just becomes this big bloated record again every time, right?
Yeah, I mean, and they're probably thinking, what do we got to do to get that level of success that we had back in the old days? And sad but true, we'll maybe just go into the studio, do a lot of drugs, and just put the album out and just put the album together. But obviously that's not an option anymore. So yeah, and do we want them to go back into the studio and do like a covers album or do like another blues album, right? I mean, nobody wants that. I think everybody wants just an honest Aerosmith record written by the band, put together by the band, and they just can't seem to do that. So it's almost like, why bother at this point? Maybe the sad truth is that, Aerosmith as a live entity no longer exists, and maybe as a recording entity, they're just done too.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes from
this list is interesting that came out. I mean, we never talked about this, but how about this for a plan? Why don't it's 50. So why don't you comment on the first 50 or first 10, so 50 through 49, and I'll comment back, and then I'll go over the next 10. We both
Okay,
got it on
we
our
can do that.
screens, right? So yeah.
All right, so so everybody, this was just published what, 2 days ago, Martin, a day ago. It's for
Yeah, something
this
like that,
week,
yeah.
and this is on RollingStone.com, and it's their top 50 Aerosmith songs of all time. So, and again, who put this list together? I couldn't even tell you.
Well, that's the great story here, Pete. Like I find this interesting, right? It's written by Rolling Stone, right?
So
So
who
they're not
knows who
throwing
that is?
any writer under the bus because, if any writer wrote this, they would just get raked over the coals because it's such a horrible list, right? Spoiler alert, right?
Yeah. So
But
no
the
one's taking
point is,
responsibility for it, basically.
yeah, but the funny thing is, it's almost like Rolling Stone knows that they'll get a lot of people really mad and reading it, and get a lot of clicks and guys like us talking about it and stuff. But it's almost like they're saying we'll throw the brand under the bus because the brand is already under the bus. People don't think we're very smart over here, right?
Yeah.
So we don't mind sacrificing the brand and saying written by Rolling Stone just to get all these views. So they're shameless in that respect. But it's almost like I can imagine any writer saying, I don't want my name on this thing.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah. So
Spoiler
that's
alert.
an interesting dynamic. But yeah, go
So there's
ahead.
50
Do your
songs.
comment.
How many songs do you think they have in their catalog, Martin?
Well,
Just
I was thinking that as well. I think this is about a fifth of their catalog because I think I added up something like 14 records, and you think 9 songs on the LPs, and then 12s and 14s and 15s on the CDs. So 150
yeah, I
songs
was gonna say
roughly.
maybe 150. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is
All
about a
right.
third, I think. Yeah.
So song number 50 is Make It off of the debut album. Pretty good song. I don't know if I'd include it in my top 50, but it's okay. It's a good track. Number 49, SOS Too Bad. Well, if Get Your Wings. I like Get Your Wings a lot. This might make my list. Whereabouts, I don't know, but I don't have an issue with that. Number 48, Kings and Queens. That would be way higher for me. Way higher. That seems just really low. Number 47, Fever from Get a Grip. I don't know. You know me and how I feel about most of the latter period Aerosmith stuff, so I'm sure I could find something else besides that. Remember Walking in the Sand is number 46 off of Night in the Ruts. I like that. I don't have much of an issue with that. East Coast, West Coast. So now here we got we're putting Joe Perry Project stuff on here. I mean, that's lame, right? This is supposed to be an Aerosmith list. And we'll come to this again in a little bit. So right there, that does not belong on here. You mean you can't find one other Aerosmith song out of the other 100 that are not included, right? That's just ridiculous. Number 44, Reason the Dog. I'm done with Mirrors. I mean, it's okay. Again, Woman of the World, number 43. That's okay. It's not a classic, but it's okay. Home Tonight, number 42. Do you get the impression that they're just kind of like throwing stuff here? It's just like, all right, well, that's my issue with this list. Yeah. Number 41, before I turn it over to you, is Bolivian Ragamuffin.
Yeah. I'll comment on the same ones, I guess, and I'll go quicker when it's your batch. But yeah, I look at this, I look at Make It on here, I look at SOS Too Bad, that probably come up a little higher. Make It's in about the right place for me. I got a refresh problem here. You know what's happening, of course. It's so full of ads, right? That
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's already.
Right.
I have it on my work computer right now, and it's already like overworking
Yeah.
this to my computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh Jesus, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Kings and Queens, I would definitely have that higher than 48. Oh yeah, let me just close a few more things and see if that's the issue. What's going on here? Let's see. That open. Okay, so yeah, it's freezing on me here. Yeah, Bolivian Ragamuffin. I would there's a bunch of these in the lower 10 that I would think are going to be on my list. This bottom batch of it, actually, I was kind of okay with. Most of these songs, even something like Fever might have skirted the lower realms. That's fine. Remember Walking in the Sand. So now we're going into covers, right? Yeah. Which is kind of weird. And yeah, I thought there's no point putting any Joe Perry project stuff on here. The Reason a Dog, it just seems random to me. I don't think I would even have that in my top 50. I'd probably pick something else from that. Woman of the World, I'd have in my top 50. Home Tonight, I'd probably have a little higher, maybe even. Bolivian Ragamuffins a good choice. Okay, so getting into the next ones, my batch, Come Together, Pointless, Beatles cover. I don't even think it's very good, the way they do it. I don't know what the point of that is. I Don't Want to Miss a Thing is an abomination to have on here at all. They got a 9. The Other Side is a really good later track. From Pump, I think that's actually a really good choice. I would have it on here and I'd have it higher. If I was, obviously what they're trying to do here is they're being politically correct and mixing in a lot of the new stuff. So they don't look like, oh, it's only the old stuff, but we all know that this should be mostly, 80% should be the old stuff, right? But The Other Side is actually a really good choice. So I'd probably throw that even higher just to have the new stuff in here, right? Combination should be way higher than 37. That's ridiculous. That's such a cool song, the way the chords move and it slides into the verses and stuff. It's obviously off of the unanimously considered best album. My Fist Your Face seems random, but I would probably pick in a top 50. I would probably have 3 songs off of Done with Mirrors, and I would thought about which ones they would be or not. Let's see. You See Me Crying. It's a good choice to have in here. That's about where roughly where I would have it. And help me out. What's 34? My
Lightning Strikes.
Blinking again. Yeah, that's a good one. I would probably have that even higher. 33. What's that?
I would have that higher as well. Yep.
Oh, here we go. Dude Looks Like a Lady. I think that's a well put together song. So this is a point I wanted to make about this list. I think the one thing you can't say about Aerosmith, even all the way up into Just Push Play and Music from Another Dimension, obviously everything they try really hard, they work really hard on these songs. It's an army of people that puts them together. There's a lot of songs that they reject from the albums, so they are trying really hard, right? And Dude Looks Like a Lady is one of those songs to me where I go, okay, they tried really hard to do this cool hit. It is a well put together song. It's a well produced song. There's a lot of ear candy in it. I'm fine. I would have it on this list. I would definitely have it in my top 50. And there's a few like that. Even things like Falling in Love Is Hard on Your Knees. Deuces Gone Wild, I think this was called. There's another one on there, Walk on Water. I'm thinking the non-LP greatest hits kinds of tracks. But usually, generally, when they do some of those hits, not the Song Doctor power ballad stuff, but some of those heavy hits are well put together songs, and they're fine. Draw the Line is my favorite Aerosmith song of all time. To have that at 32 is a total travesty. I have no idea why they would even have that low. Forget calling it your favorite Aerosmith song. They don't have to do that, but I have it way at the top of my list. It's my favorite, period. Adam's Apple, I would have on here, definitely higher than 31. Let the Music Do the Talking. Again, better on the Joe Perry album, but that's probably one I would put on here. Or maybe I would leave it out because it was a Joe Perry song first.
I would leave it out. I mean, they do it's good, but it's a Joe song, right? From it's just basically a cover of that. That's why it shouldn't be on here.
Okay, I don't know if you want to comment on 40 through 30 or move on, whatever you like.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. They've got some good stuff on here. I agree. Draw the Line should be a little higher. I'm not a big fan of Dude Looks Like a Lady. I mean, it's just a personal thing. Lightning Strikes, I would definitely have higher. Adam's Apple is a good one. I would probably have that somewhere around there, and I would also take out Let the Music Do the Talking. So let's see. So 29 is Chip Away the Stone. This would make my list. Maybe 29 is probably where it should be. Maybe a little higher. That might be in the low 20s for me, but it's got to be on here. Crazy wouldn't be anywhere near my list. I despise Crazy. It's just they're going to put every latter period hit on this list. You knew that was going to be the case. It would not be on my list at all. Big 10-inch record. Yeah, this seems kind of high for me. I would have this a little lower. I'm not a huge fan of Big 10-inch record. What else? Rats in the Cellar would be way higher on mine. I mean, it's just this is to me a drop dead Aerosmith classic. It's at number 26. Number 25, Angel. Again, another song that would not make my list at all, but you knew it was going to be here. That's a 25. Lord of the Thighs at number 24. I'd probably have that a little bit higher. I think that would be a top 15 for me. Nobody's Fault at 23, I think is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's a top 10 Aerosmith song of all time.
Yeah.
What else we got here? Same Old Song and Dance at number 22. I would probably have that a little bit higher as well. And number 21, Living on the Edge. Again, I'm not much of a fan. I can totally see that being in a top 50 though, but number 21, I think is kind of pushing it for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you got anything to say about any of those.
Yeah, so I've always liked Chip Away the Stone, but it's you know, the writing credit on that's a little bit of a weird one, and of course we know that was that's on the I believe, hopefully I'm getting this right from memory, but it is on the live album as live, and then it is also they do have a studio version that's a B side of a 45, or maybe it's the A side of a 45. I can't remember. Anyways, you know, it's a pretty bona fide Aerosmith song, I suppose, and I think they do a good job of it. It's one of those stonesy ones. Yeah, I despise Crazy as well. I'm not even going to look at my screen. I wrote them down because, yeah, it's like all these pictures and ads. Big 10-inch record, I probably wouldn't have on here. Rats in the Cellar, I would have higher than 26. Angel, I despise. Can't stand it. That was the start of the downfall. I would not have it on this list at all. Lord of the Thighs, about right at 24, maybe a little higher. Nobody's Fault, way higher. I agree. Same Old Song and Dance always annoyed me, that song. I don't like it very much, but it would probably, you know, it'd be in my 40s or 50s. And Living on the Edge is another one of those where you're kind of like, they tried, you know, it's a little bit too, you know, social consciousness for Aerosmith. It doesn't really feel like that's something Steven thinks about a lot. So it just doesn't feel very real to me, right? It feels a little forced, and even the music is like too epic. They're trying to be, oh, look how thoughtful we are. It's long, it's got all these parts. But I kind of respect it for trying harder, kind of thing. Okay, so let's see if I could scroll through my hang on, it's still open. Okay, so we'll get to 20. No Surprise. I love No Surprise. But this is about right at number 20. I'm fine with this being here, but I love this album.
Well placed there. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would pick a bunch of stuff from that album. Jaded, no way. This would not be. This is not one of those hits that I particularly like. Help me out here.
It's almost like we have to include a couple things from the most recent albums, right? You know, just because.
Well, you bring up a good point when you said like, oh, the hits are going to have to be here. I'm wondering why. I mean, do they really think politically they have to please the label, you know, with this list? I don't know. It's kind of weird. I bet there is some politics probably.
Or just please the readers who only know the hits. Right.
Yeah, you know, I guess they got more mainstream readers, so for sure, you know, they think they might complain if they didn't put in the hits. But you wonder if there's some ad revenue stuff going on too, you know, label support in various ways. You know, maybe even label support that isn't even particularly related to Aerosmith, but label support for some other artists, right? It's the same label, so you got to put this stuff.
Like we're going to put Jaded on this list because it was a minor hit, but we're not going to put Round and Round on this list because it's too obscure.
Right. Yeah. What It Takes. Now that's an interesting one. I think What It Takes was a really well put together song and pretty decent for a ballad. So I was kind of happy with What It Takes. I think Janie's Got a Gun and What It Takes kind of quietly do the job of improving the reputation of Pump by not being too horrible, right? Not being like Crazy or Crying or Angel kind of thing, right? Sick as a Dog is my second favorite Aerosmith song of all time. They've got it at 17. I would have this a very close second to draw the line. I think it's just great the way they've got the electric and the acoustic and the background vocals. So Stonesy, just love it to death. Yeah, Crying I would not have on my list. They got it at 15. Train Kept a Rolling. I've never been a big fan. Obviously, they didn't write it either. So I would probably completely leave it off my list just because I want to support them as songwriters, right? I want to put the songs on here that they wrote, kind of thing, right? Licking a Promise I love to death. That's in my top 5. So I would have that way higher than 14. I just think that riff is so explosive and heroic sounding, right? And then Amazing I would not have on my list at all. Ragdoll is another one of these where I think well put together song, good idea. I'm not a hater of Permanent Vacation or Pump particularly. I think there's a lot of value to both those albums. I actually like both of them more than Done with Mirrors. So Ragdoll, I think, is a pretty decent tune. It would probably make my top 50. Last
Yeah, I
Child
was gonna
might
say
not
at
make
number
my top
12
50.
though, it's like it's awfully high.
Yeah,
But
no,
again,
no, we'd be it would all be Rocks and Toys and A Night at the Ruts and Rockin' a Hard Place songs,
yeah.
basically, for me. All up there super high. And then Love in an Elevator is another one that I think is a pretty darn good song. Well put together. I have no problem with it at all. I definitely wouldn't have it as high as number 10, but
Oh, you missed Last Child at number 11.
oh, did I? Yeah, Last Child. I was never a big Last Child fan
Oh, see,
either.
I like Last Child. That would probably make my top 10.
Yeah, too funky, too slow, too, we as kids, for whatever reason, we aligned it with the disco scene in a weird way, because it's got that kind of like funky kind of thing going on. Yeah, I was never a big fan, but anyways, I hope I didn't overreach there. Did I do
No, that's
20?
10. Yeah, you're
Oh, did
there.
I do this right? Okay, so you go ahead with the last 10.
Okay, so coming at number 9, we got No More, No More.
Okay.
I don't know if that would be in the top 10 for me, but that's definitely a top 20 Aerosmith song. So
Yep.
that's I'm no issues with it being there. Seasons of Wither at number 8. I like it a lot. I don't know if it would be a top 10 song for me, but I totally dig it. Toys in the Attic title track at number 7. I think that's a top 10 song for me. So I have no issues with that. Mama Kin at number 6. That seems a little high for me. I do like Mama Kin, but again, I think some of these that are making their top 10 they're easy top 20 for me. I don't know about top 10. Janie's Got a Gun at number 5. Absolutely not. That would like I don't even know if that would be in my top 50. But top 5, again, that just seems to me like an excuse to get every 80s and early 90s hit into this list. Back in the Saddle at number 4. I mean, I think Back in the Saddle could be, I guess number 4 is good. It's generally a top 5 Aerosmith song for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess number 4 kind of makes sense. Number 3, Dream On. I mean, it's a classic song, but that's not a top 5 for me. Not quite. I like a lot of the songs a little more. Sweet Emotion is number 2. I mean, that seems like, you'd expect that to be there. And then Walk This Way is number 1. I'm not as big a Walk This Way fan as a lot of people are. I get why people love it. It's got a great riff, and that would never be a number 1 for me. Is it a top 10, top 15? Probably, for sure. I would rather have I mean, I could pick all sorts of. To me, Back in the Saddle is more a number 1 than Walk This Way, just for me. But yeah, I don't. Obviously, it just seems to me that the top 5 are pretty predictable for the most part. Although Janie's Got a Gun, I don't understand why that's there. So I don't know if you got any comments on those last few, but
Yeah, so the last 10, I would say that 5 of these I wrote down the 9 here because I went Love in the Elevator as well. But so out of the last 9, I would say 5 of these would make my top 20. So that's pretty good. I think they did a pretty good job here. No More, No More. Off the top of my head, I would probably have that around 20. Seasons of Wither, I really like. I would probably have that around 7, 8, 9. Toys in the Attic, I'd probably have around 5, 6, 7, 8. Mama Kin, I just have it in for that album. I do not like that album very much. I find it depressing. I hate Steven's voice. I hate the production. So I believe I would have not a single song from the debut album in my top 50.
wow.
Janie's Got a Gun is way too high, but I think it's a pretty well put together song. It's pretty cool. The lyrics cool. It's up tempo. I think the chord changes are okay on it. I'm not a big Janie's Got a Gun hater. I'm not even sure it would make my top 50 though. It might be, yeah, it might make 50 to 40. Back in the Saddle, I've always been not a big fan of this song. I call it a Gene Simmons bass farts song because I don't like ding 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 ding. I just can't stand that. Right? I just don't like that song. I don't like the melody of it very much. I've never been a fan. Now, when it goes into the verse, it's kind of cool, and you got that galloping thing going on. But there's just something about it. It just seems like a weirdly default song. Just like the songwriting on it is nowhere near Nobody's Fault, Rats in the Cellar, combination, Licking a Promise, Sick as a Dog, right? um Now, Dream On, they've got it number 3. I don't think that would make my top 50 even. I find it depressing. I find the chorus is just boring Louis Chords. I don't like the arrangement. I don't like the clavinet or whatever that keyboard sound is in it. I just it's depressing to me. Now, Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way as number 2 and number 1, I think are really good, solid choices. I think what they do here is they balance the fact that they're super famous songs and they're really, really solid, really good, interesting songs, both of them. Super interesting songs, both of them. So, me, just my personal taste, I go Draw the Line, Sick as a Dog. But Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way would probably both be top 5 or 6 for me, anyways. Because again, just to also be responsible, right? And show Monty that I don't only pick obscure songs, right? As I pushed back with them and said, no, Monty, I would have Walk This Way super high. Walk This Way is one of those cool songs where I always have that thing, that fantasy of I would love to be in this band, walking into the conference room with the new music. All the suits are sitting around the table with their arms crossed, right? And I say this about Bohemian Rhapsody. I say this about Cowboys from Hell, right? It's like I would love to sit down and pull out, here's
watch their jaws drop, right?
Yeah, here's the stereo that they always have set up in the corner in the conference room. And it's like, oh, play us your new music. Let's see if you got anything here, right? Walk This Way is so perfect for that. It's like those guys would listen to that riff and they'd just be dancing around the room, dancing on the table. It's amazing, right? So I love that about this. So yeah, I think they do a pretty good job with the final bunch here. But as I said when we were talking about it before, this list almost seems in a lot of cases completely random. But I actually hate this list even more than that, where I think it's aggressively awful, right? Just a little bit aggressively awful. It's you can't screw up completely making a list like this. There's going to be a lot of great songs on it, right? I mean, it should be mostly great songs, but I think at least half this list is just horrible, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, because there's to me, there's some stuff that just doesn't rank high at all. That personal preference aside, it seems like they just wanted every hit that they ever had has got to be on here, and most of them are pretty high. But then they're just like omitting a lot of really, really good deep tracks. So yeah, like I said, Walk This Way wouldn't be my number 1, but I agree. I think Walk This Way is a great representation of a band that just really found their swagger in a big way. I mean, it's just like it's badass. I agree. For me, maybe it's just been overplayed for me, but I would have Back in the Saddle a little bit higher. And Sweet Emotion's got to be right up there, And I agree with you. Like, I don't dislike Dream On. I don't think I would have it as high as it is here, but yeah, there's Rats in the Cellar for sure, and Nobody's Fault, and Round and Round. I mean, that would all rank very, very high for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And as I said when we were talking about this in email with the group, I would put Joni's Butterfly really high. I've always loved that song. I think that's the classic off Rock and Hard Place. And there's 3 or 4 others I would probably have in a 50. Certainly, I'd probably have 4 songs from that album in here, and I'd probably have 4 at least from Night in the Ruts on here too.
Oh, yeah, like Chiquita's
Oh yeah,
more on this
Chiquita for
list, right? I
sure.
love that
Yeah.
song. So good.
3 Mile Smile, was it called? Yeah, that one. I almost don't even really mind them having Remember Walking in the Sand on here, because I really do like that song. It's just it's too bad it's a cover, but yeah.
Was that the only song represented from that album on this list?
I
mean,
think
Coney Island.
no
Coney
surprise
Island's
was
not
on
even
here.
on this list.
No surprise was here, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
It's as an album, it's pretty underrepresented, I think. But it is amazing how, like, over like time, records that back in the day, like Draw the Line and Night in the Ruts, which were maybe like not looked at as great over time, fans have become very fond of those records. I think they've really kind of stood the test of time.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one I would probably have on here from Draw the Line is Bright Light Fright. Even
That's
though
a good
Joe
one.
sings it, but still, I just think it's kind of a cool, well put together song.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. You take out the covers and the Joe Perry stuff, Joe Perry project stuff on this list, and you could probably fit another, whatever it is, 6 to 8 actual great Aerosmith deep cuts on this list, Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, let's move on to Black Sabbath. So there's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about how, Bill Ward would love to play one last show with Sabbath, and the rest of the guys have kind of commented or not commented on, would they be interested? Can it happen? That sort of thing. So a lot of people have been speculating, well, will they do it? Will they do that one final show? I mean, Ozzy even came out and said, it was great. We did that last tour. And, Tommy did fine on drums, but it kind of almost like it didn't put the final stamp on their career because Bill wasn't involved, which is really weird to hear all that now, because it's like, well, you could have made the decision to just do whatever you could do to make it work for him at the time, or maybe they just felt that physically he couldn't do it. I don't know all the reasons there, but it's brought up the speculation that will Sabbath decide to do that one last show with Bill with the original lineup to kind of put the final, nail in the coffin and say, okay, Black Sabbath played their final show. They played the original lineup. Now it's done. Everybody can kind of move on with their lives. So I guess what we wanted to talk about is like, do we think that'll ever happen? Is it a good idea? And if it does happen, how should it happen? So Martin's got some ideas. I've got some ideas. And personally myself, would I love to see it? For sure. I mean, I've seen the original lineup when they did that first reunion tour, so it's not like it's never happened for me. But I think to me, the end of Black Sabbath is kind of hard to kind of, it just doesn't sit well with me. It's like I always want there to be a Black Sabbath, so it's kind of hard to come to the realization that they are the age that they are, and that there might never be another Sabbath record or another Sabbath show or whatever to see. So that's kind of hard to kind of grasp, I think. So this whole discussion, I think, is good because if the possibility is there, how can they make it work? Because we know what's going on with Ozzy, right? Ozzy doing touring and live stuff that's a whole other thing to talk about. So I don't know what you think on this, Martin. Would you like to see it? I would personally, but how they do it, that's another thing.
Well, this just dawned on me. So this literally just came to mind. I think okay. So first of all, I'll say that I don't think they should do the live thing. There's just too many variables. It really can't be done. And I think Ozzy's even a weaker link now than Bill in that whole thing.
I would agree.
It would not look great. It would be too much work. I don't think they could pull it off, blah, blah, blah. But what I think they should do is Banger Films, Scott and Sam should get the old gang back together, which is me and Ralph and Mike Munn and the editors and everything. And I think what would be cool here, is to do something a little bit like the ZZ Top doc. And this was Ralph's idea, because this comes from what I originally thought that they should do. And when I Facebooked about this with people a month ago or whatever, this is what I said, but this just came to mind now, because what Ralph did on the ZZ Top doc is he suggested as a sort of skeleton throughout the doc, let's get the guys together and record them playing. I believe it was in a controlled little hall situation. Like there was no crowd at all, right? It was just, we're going to have, and then Ralph selected some key songs that he wanted to have played that would support different story points and stuff. So when you think of that little band from Texas doc, that we did, a nice Banger Films doc, they play throughout that whole thing. I think they play throughout. Anyways, that was the premise to we've got the typical interview footage and the archival stuff, but here's the band playing live. So I think Banger should do that with Sabbath, where basically we have those guys playing live in a controlled, severely edited environment, many takes taken, choose the best takes, blah blah blah, of Ozzy singing and Bill playing, and a lot of, a lot of fast camera angles to, to make sure, this just looks great, right? It looks like they're having an amazing performance, and do like a farewell doc. But the element of the farewell doc that is this playing live thing is you get to see those guys jamming in a room together finally, at the end, playing live throughout this doc kind of thing. And the reason I just thought of that is that because I thought, first of all, as a substitute for the playing live thing, it almost reminds me to tie it to ZZ Top again. It's like when ZZ Top went out with all the Dangerous Critters, right? There was all this unpredictability, and does it look great? Not really. They're up there in a little cage far away, and it's like, this is kind of weird, and problems with the snakes and the buffaloes and all this sort of stuff, and the buzzards and all this. Bill and Ozzy are those critters in this situation, right?
Much,
so it's like, is this going to work? Who knows, right? It's like anytime you bring animals into something, is the bird going to fly in the right place and all that kind of stuff, right? So as a substitute, I thought, why don't you just make a controlled, really cool video that's a YouTube video or a DVD, the final thing in a controlled situation, or like when people do that sort of thing, maybe a hybrid idea of that is a small crowd, and everybody knows that we're going to stop and start again, do 5 versions of Symptom of the Universe and pick the best one, or cut things together and all that kind of stuff, right? So that was the other idea. So my favorite idea is the Banger Films doc, but also, what about something that's new and fresh and different, i.e. something like the Getty Book Tour, or Ray Davies going on the road and telling stories, or Bruce Springsteen, but really make it like Black Sabbath's Goodbye to Everybody is a spoken word tour, right? Because I think basically Bill is a great speaker. He's probably the best interviewee out of all 4 of them. So he's going to have, I think, no problem up there. Forget about health problems. You just plop them in a chair. The curtain comes down. They're already sitting down. So you don't have to see Ozzy hobble in and sit down. He's sitting there. Ozzy is actually a really engaging sort of speaker with his quips and stuff. Now, he's quiet and he's mumbly and he doesn't talk a lot, but he can crack a good joke, right? He's got a good swift mind for that. So the 4 of them up there together, and Geezer and Tony are exactly the same as each other, which is they don't have a lot to say either, and the answers are short, and they're also quiet and soft-spoken. But the 4 of them together, I think you'd get that chemistry. And to tie it to Banger Films again, that was another Ralph idea. In the Rush movie, he was adamant that, no, I think a great scene would be to have these 3 guys sitting together at a dinner table, getting drunk, talking to each other.
And that was the best part of the documentary.
Right. So you see that friendship thing. So I think Ozzy can't cut it live. Maybe, I guess, Bill can't cut it live. That was always a mysterious thing. I think maybe he could, but whatever. But the point is, all 4 of those guys, I think, could cut it live, sitting in a chair, just shooting the shit with each other, right? So I think that would be a cool, different thing. It's like, you want the farewell Black Sabbath tour, they're going to go through theaters, they're going to be sitting up there, they're going to be answering questions, and they're literally going to say goodbye to their fans.
And you pick like 5 big cities, right, where you do this in. It's not like,
yeah, well, even more. I think this wouldn't be that much energy taken out of those guys. I think they could probably pull this off. I think they'd probably be a little more. I think we can do 25 of these rather than even 5 shows, right? Or even 1 show, put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be an interesting, fresh thing. You want the Black Sabbath Goodbye tour. They're literally going to sit down and they're going to talk to you in the crowd and say goodbye in all these cities.
Yeah, because those are great ideas, because I think like the selfish part of, like, me, for instance, and a lot of people, because I've seen a lot of people discuss this, is like, well, they need to go and do that one last show. They should do it in Birmingham, right? And where it all began, the 4 of them. But then the more you think about it, it's like, well, are they even physically capable, specifically Bill and Ozzy, right, of doing a 90-minute show, right, at this point? And do we really want to see them all? Because the other option is, well, maybe you get them to headline Wacken or another big festival show, and you get them up there to play Paranoid, Iron Man, Children of the Grave, and War Pigs, right? And do like a 20-minute set or half-hour set or whatever. Is that enough? Could they even pull that off, right? I don't know. I mean, personally, for me, if they're going to play a show, I want to hear the whole repertoire, right? I don't want to just hear the same four songs we always hear from them. But I think your idea about doing like a documentary film that includes, the interview footage, them playing in, like you said, a controlled environment, whether it's a studio or a small venue with a select group of people in the audience, that could be interesting. You could promote that as a pay-per-view, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
good.
that works.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, because how long ago did this stuff start getting thrown out there? This was already 2 months ago, right? And we know how fast time goes by, right? So, and if another year goes by and nothing happens with this, it's probably not going to happen. So I think if they're going to do something, they got to strike while the iron is hot because, Ozzy's condition is not getting any better. They're all getting older and, who knows what's going to happen. But I just would love to see it. 'Cause, I mean, for me personally, it's like I know, Geezer has done some stuff. Ozzy's still been putting out records. Tony's been pretty quiet of late, although there's always been these rumblings that he's going to do something new. There's been these kind of like hints from Glenn Hughes that maybe he and Tony are going to do something again. I don't know. We'll see. But I would love to see one last statement from the four of them, whatever it is. And I'm totally fine with the kind of talk tour because I think that would be fun. And I would definitely go see something like that, but you would have to do that because I'm trying to think when Getty did that, most of the venues were what, about like 5,000 or less, like,
Yeah, they were theaters, and that's basically the gold standard of a book tour, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he had merch and everything and selling books, and it was like a big production every time, and he got big crowds. So that was basically the top end of doing a book tour. But you brought up an interesting point, the pay-per-view situation, to get even more esoteric about this. It's almost like you could make that a pay-per-view, worldwide live event, but what you could do is have all of that playing live in a studio footage way pre-done,
and
and then
totally edited, yeah,
make a live, but dovetail in to add a little bit of danger, make the live event the fact that those four guys are going to be sitting there being interviewed live, and they're going to be talking live. So you could have a mix of the performance footage. And like I say, that could be in a studio, or it could be like a theater situation where the crowd knows that, look, guys, you're here for like 6 or 7 hours,
yeah,
and we're going to be redoing parts and all this sort of stuff, but we're going to make it look like a concert, right? So it could be that intermixed with truly live. It's like, okay, we are going to roll the dice, and whatever these guys say live, they're going to say it, but at least it's not in concert, right?
yeah,
So yeah, mix that together, make a big pay-per-view, situation out of it.
yeah. We'll wait and see if any of this happens, right? But I think that there's potential here. And, obviously the guys have egos and, they probably wouldn't mind making some money. So I think there's money to be had here for them and for the fans, to see Sabbath one last go round, whatever it might be, I think is something that we would love and we would look forward to. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right. So we'll move on from Sabbath. So Phil Mogg, longtime and founding member of UFO, decided to retire here with this whole retire thing again, right? Retired UFO as not only a touring band, but as a recording band. So basically UFO is no more. And, Phil's had his share of health issues. And Phil is how old now, Martin? 74, 75, 76? I don't know, something like that. Anyway, it's in mid upper 70s. I kind of was under the impression that Phil was just going to retire from music altogether. And literally within a year, he puts together Moggs Motel, brand new band. They've released a couple singles. I guess the album is coming out fairly soon, sometime this fall. We've had a chance to go and listen to the two songs, and not too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, I'm going to come out and say it. I kind of found the two songs a little bit more interesting than some of the more recent UFO output. Dare I say that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the biggest disappointment, the biggest tragedy of this whole thing so far is there's no apostrophe in Moggs. It's just
Yeah.
Moggs Motel. That's ridiculous. But yeah, these two songs, Sunny Side of Heaven and Apple Pie, are pretty cool. You know, it reminds me of and yeah, he's just basically coming back. You know, there's backing vocals, there's different personalities. The two big personalities in the band are Tony Newton and Neil Carter.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple of big pros in there, and then of course Phil, and Phil's doing his wise man who's seen it all shtick up there as a vocalist and lyricist, right? Vocal styling and the lyrics.
Yeah.
So yeah, it reminds me a little bit of so far it feels like they're gonna make a record. And all the song titles are out. We got Face of an Angel, I Thought I Knew You, The Princess Bride, Other People's Lives, Tinker Tailor, Weather, Harry's Place, The Wrong House, Shame, Storyville, Extra Track in USA and Canada Only, Taylor's Woods. But to me, this album so far sounds like not quite as good as Chocolate Box and better than Edge of the World. It just sounds like another Phil project and better than Sign of Four, or whatever it was called, right? So yeah, it's sounding pretty good so far. It is kind of weird seeing him do this again, and also the Wise Swami thing is in his fashion sense too, right? It's the Phil as the
stylish, like Don Dock in there or something.
Yeah, and a little bit of Cray Brothers in there as well. You know, the Minder, the UK Minder, right? The minor gangster kind of look as well to him. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that he's out there doing this. I know I don't know. I haven't read much of the situation on playing live. I'm sure he's kind of playing it by ear. It's like, see how the album's received, see how healthy I am, at that point, and limited shows or whatever, who knows. But it's cool. It's good that we're seeing another project from him. There's no particular, so far, no deep personality to what you're getting. It's not really weird music or anything. No, like I say, it's conservative hard rock basically so far.
Here's what I found really interesting. So after all these years, we're now supposed to take Neil Carter as lead guitar player in a band. Because I'm watching these videos and I'm like, and he is, and he's soloing away and all these big riffs. And I'm like, where'd that come from? Because for the last 40 years, right, Neil Carter is the keyboard player and rhythm guitar player sideman, and that's it.
But great songwriter. He wrote a lot of those great UFO songs from the Tonka era, right? That we
so I'm watching him and I'm like, this guy can really play. I mean, I was very impressed. And I'm like, holy, where's that been all these years?
Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was really interesting that now all of a sudden it's like, well, he's now going to be the main guy from a musical perspective in the band. I'm like, oh, I mean, good for Neil Carter, right? Because maybe he's just been this guy that's been overlooked for all these years, but it's just at this late stage now all of a sudden he's being thrust out there as that guy in this band. So good for him.
It's almost to have some tidiness and uniformity. You could have just called this band Mogg Carter, right?
You could have, basically, right?
Yeah, because it feels like a follow up to Mogg Way in a sense, right? So
I don't know. I don't remember what label they said this was going to be on, but SPV Steam Hammer. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So that's coming out, I guess, sometime late September.
I think you said,
right around the corner. So look forward to that. That should be good. So, and last, I guess we'll discuss the new Motley Crue single.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go cover the Beastie Boys.
Yeah. Yeah, an interesting version. I find the production to be kind of industrial on it. John Five's got all these like guitar licks kind of all over the place. Rhythmically, they're doing some cool things where they break down to halftime for the chorus. Tommy is an interesting drummer. Vince sounds, everything sounds pretty processed, but Vince sounds like there's kind of some weird double tracking of his vocals going on there, and you're hearing both the tracks. But I don't know. It sounds like a Crue song. That's kind of cool. Dogs of War came out that April 23rd, 2024. That's one that's going to be on this supposed new album as well. And then there's this song called Cancelled, where you can actually hear a short snippet of it over on YouTube, like a taster thing. And it sounds like Dogs of War. Basically, this is Motley Crue doing that kind of big, slow, doomy thing. These they both sound like songs that sound, they sound like new experimental Guns N' Roses, and B, they sound like songs that could have come off the self-titled album with John Corabi. They're a little too ambitious and complicated for Motley Crue. It's like when Motley Crue did that complicated serious album, and then Generation Swine was complicated and serious, and then they said, no, we got to go back to being old Motley Crue, and they do New Tattoo, and then they do Saints of Los Angeles, which is them being ambitious again. This is them kind of being ambitious. So apparently we're going to get this canceled EP with these 3 songs. And then there's some weird, almost like back to the Motley Crue rumors and lying thing. When you read the news about it, it's like, no, we finished the album and we produced it. And then now you're starting to see a little bit of backtracking, vagueness, saying, we're going to put out a song here and there or whatever. And it's really just a snapshot in time. And, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get the whole album at once. Maybe they're just playing that game or whatever, but it sounds like they got something finished.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to wonder what the behind the scenes kind of opinions of what they've done in the studio are. And maybe, they announced probably before they should that they had all this stuff done. And then once people started checking it out, they're like, well, maybe we'll just release a song or 2 here and there. I don't know. I mean, let's face it, John 5 is a great musician, and I think was always a really good score for them. And just, I think I always wonder, like, well, how much is he really going to be allowed to do in a band like this? But I think that if he's allowed to contribute to the songwriting and the arranging, I mean, you got to expect there's going to be some interesting stuff going on here. Forget the fact that, in my opinion, Vance can't sing anything at this point in time anymore. And when you listen to the Beastie Boys cover, it's like, yeah, you can tell they worked up a lot in the studio to get him to sound like that. But I'm interested to hear more. I didn't really care for Dogs of War all that much. I thought the guitar work was pretty good, but as a song, it didn't really do much for me. So, I mean, I'm interested to hear more just because I respect him as a musician, and I'm intrigued to hear what he brings to the table as far as new music goes. And, a cover song, that, whatever, let's hear some more original stuff. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of incongruous, the whole idea of John 5 next to Vince Neil, because John 5 is a genius, virtuoso musician, right? And you're right. I mean, he could do amazing, amazing things on his own, as he's done. Some of my favorite instrumental albums are by him, right? I mean, that guy is just a wizard, right?
Yeah.
And he's super entertaining as well. But, if you get this super creative music and then you get Vince Neil on top, you almost think Vince Neil's, in the back of his mind saying, what is this brainy crap that I have to sing to, right? And nothing feels real, right?
Yeah.
And we hear all the rumors of Nikki Sixx. He's not really like that either, right? Tommy probably is. I almost feel like Tommy and John 5 have like a copacetic mind meld of like they're both interested in music, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Nikki, Nikki's interested in music, but we do feel like he's more like traditional Motley Crue, and Vince Neil's traditional Motley Crue.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what actually happens in the end. For now, they're just kind of throwing songs out there, and as an album to follow, we'll wait and see. Maybe it's just an EP, and I don't know. So more to come on that. So, Martin, get us caught up on what's going on with the Contrarians and the podcast and new books in stock. You got the brand new Rainbow book, right?
Yeah, Rainbow Run with the Wolf, Rainbow on Records, the new panel book. So that's available now. You can messenger me for that. I haven't got it up at the site yet, but it's available. And actually, if you want it and you want to hit a PayPal button for it, just hit the PayPal button for any of the previous. The Robert Plant, the Bluish to Cult, the Thin Lizzy, it's all the same prices around the world for that. And then anything else in print, of course, this is all at martinpopoff.com. And got the audio podcast, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, up to 270 episodes of that. The last one was kind of arcane. It was about those LP bands who released an LP firmly in the LP era, and then you didn't see an album from them until we were firmly in the CD era. So it was comparing what went on with, spanning that 1990 year by 3 or 4 years on either side, kind of thing, and what happens. Yeah, it's a weird episode, but anyways, you can check that out. Yeah, it was kind of cool. And yeah, Contrarians, there's stuff happening all the time there as well. And the Kicked in the Teeth audio podcast with John Gaffney that I do on ACDC.
Cool. Sounds good. Go check that out, folks. And what do we got coming up here? Ken is coming in for the professor's picks in a couple hours, so be on the lookout for that. That'll be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. Tomorrow we got Jamie Laszlo and the review crew. That'll be tomorrow evening on Saturday, and then Sunday morning I will be ranking the albums of Corrosion of Conformity. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then, of course, even though Monday's a holiday here in the States, we've got the Hudson Valley Squares for you Monday night, talking about some of our favorite underrated, well, 5 each hard rock and metal bands that we feel are extremely underrated, that kind of never got the success of some of their peers, but we'll talk about why we feel they should have. So that's coming up on Monday. Till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week here at the Funhouse. Put your opinions on some of the stuff we talked about today down in the comments below. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.